ago. It just ends in checkmate, and I think
Queen G1 check, and has there been a handshake?
Yes, there has.
We see
It's
on our
over.
webcam Magnus Carlsen shaking his head. That's not something you see
it
too
is
often.
over. 3-0.
Fabiano Caruana doing an admirable job to suppress a smile. That smile is bursting out of him, and he's doing his best. Wow, incredible sports person. Starting the tournament with 3-0.
World champion Magnus Carlsen in disarray. Look at him at the
Look at
board.
him with his head in his hands. We
Just
don't see this.
unbelievable.
What you just saw was the end between Fabiano Caruana and Magnus Carlsen at the 2014 Sinquefield Cup in round 3, the game that we analyzed in our previous video. This allowed Fabi to start with an incredible 3-0 start. Not unparalleled, but definitely an incredible result, and everybody was amazed. But what happened in the remainder of the tournament surpassed the wildest expectations anybody in the chess world could have, including Fabiano himself. Take a look. After the first 3 rounds, obviously 3 out of 3, an amazing result, but you know, you've probably had in your lifetime 3 out of 3. People have seen that. At the same time, there were definitely discussions. I mean, who's going to stop this guy? And you're playing Levon in round 4. You're with the white pieces, you're feeling good about your chances, and you mentioned at the end of the previous one that Levon was probably the closest in terms of points to you. How did you approach this game?
Yeah, had the white pieces, and I had some sort of idea to play against Levon. So early on in my career, when I started breaking into kind of the top, Levon was the most difficult opponent for me, by far. He had a very big score against me. He beat me in 2008. Basically, I could never survive the opening against him early on.
Really?
His openings were very advanced. Mine were not.
That's what you mentioned in the previous video, that your openings were still a little bit iffy.
Yeah, my openings were pretty rough back in these days. Okay, 2014, they were starting to get better, but like 2012, 2013, or if we go back earlier, even 2008 was the first time we played when he was a top player and I was not. And yeah, he would very often just get a winning position from the opening, like objectively winning, not a small advantage, not a big advantage, but just winning.
Yeah.
So he was a tough player for me. And nevertheless, with the white pieces, of course, I'm not really in risk of getting a worse position. So yeah, normally I'll press with the white pieces against him. Okay, so I started with e4, and Levon has always been a big e4, e5 player, so he played e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e5, and he's always been, or almost always been, either a Marshall player or a Berlin player. So the Berlin is knight f6, but traditionally, Levon has really enjoyed playing the Marshall.
Oh, he was huge on the Marshall.
And we're on the way to the Marshall, right?
Yeah.
Castle, bishop to e7.
Yeah.
And here, basically, the Marshall begins. If white plays rook to e1, defending the pawn, black plays b5. At some point, castles and tries to play d5. That's the whole idea.
Sacrifice the pawn, but you get a lot of compensation.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of the Marshall, and it's already very worked out in terms of theory, right? So at some point, white started to play d3, as I played, defending the pawn again. In another way, b5, bishop b3. And now, I don't know who first came up with this concept of, usually, white develops with like c3, right? c3, knight d2, the knight comes to g3. But
and the trade-off of not playing rook to e1 is that you don't get d4 in one move, you get it in two moves.
You try to get it slower. It's a very slow plan. c3 and the knight slowly maneuvers, eventually you play d4. But at some point, people started to do this whole plan of developing the knight to c3 and a3. So that's basically what happened in this game. I was following this plan. I think it was like Vichy was one of the first guys. And we are talking like 2013. It's a very modern plan.
Yeah.
So
knight
castle,
c3.
Yeah. Castle, knight c3.
And now d6.
d6 and a3, because now black is threatening knight a5, so a3. So this is kind of the modern concept.
Trying to save the bishop.
Yeah, you want to keep this bishop. It's very important. So the concept is knight on c3 is defending the center. So knight a5, bishop a2, and bishop e6. This was also the like trendy line at the time.
Discussion.
I was playing this with both sides as well.
Yeah.
Black is trying to trade bishops, but first wants to gain a tempo on the bishop. So okay, now there's a choice of different options here. b4, for example, big option. Okay, taking on e6 is kind of critical, right?
I always thought b4 was the main move.
Definitely.
I don't even know why. I never considered this bishop takes c6 as one of the.
They're both critical moves for sure. In any case, white at some point wants to play b4. The point being that black is happy to get c5 to get a lot of control in the center. So we want to give the question to the knight. Either it goes back to c6, draw, or it goes out to b7 where it's completely restricted. c6 blocks the pawn. It's a better square than b7 where it really has no future.
I guess b7 you would go knight d8, knight f7 or something like that.
Yeah, the knight is really out of the way there. And at least here the knight defends the pawn and prepares some kind of d5. So here I think I played bishop d2. Is
Bishop
it
d2, yes.
Yeah. Bishop d2, d5, and
Rook to e1.
rook to e1, queen d6, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Queen to d6.
I think that all of these moves are like there's a lot of different options. And also here, like I think white can play queen e2. A lot of theory is rather vague here because like it's not very concrete. But I had this very rare idea, which I played knight to a2. It was a new idea at the time. Now computers show it as a potential move. Of course, white is not really like refuting the opening with this move, but the idea is pretty clear. The knight is coming to b3. From b3, it defends at c5 square. So this is what I said. I had a new idea. This is it, and this was the. I was quite happy to get it on the board. I think he was rather unfamiliar with it, but of course,
he spent about 10 minutes at this point.
Yeah, the position is still pretty. Like you could probably play it without much preparation because it's not super concrete. Like you're not getting blown off the board.
So what's the idea of knight a2?
Yeah, the knight is coming to c1 and b3 at some point. From b3, it has a few functions. It controls the c5 square, also prevents a5 ideas. Very important because black would like to create a weakness on the b4 square.
Okay.
So the long-term plan after you get the knight here is to eventually try to play c4 or c3 and try to expand at some point in the center.
Yeah. Well,
of course, it's a slow plan.
It's a funny looking move, I'm not going to lie. But it makes sense because you cannot go via e2, you're losing the pawn on e4. So if you think about it, and probably you, with your coach, thought about ideas of how to
we were checking this for sure.
Continue this. And by the way, the engines were not as strong. At this point in chess, you are mostly working, you would say 50-50 with the engine in terms of ideas? In terms of trying ideas, or
it was more like the engine would do a blunder check and also verify if an idea is viable. But most of the ideas came.
You had
from,
to use your brain.
Yeah, came from your own creativity or whatever you want to call it.
We don't have to use our brains at all.
Now I think the creativity is more like, what can I get away with?
Yeah.
That the computer says is not that good, but at least it's going to be tough for my opponent. So it's more of like a practical sort of creativity. This was just. Like, we're trying to objectively find good ideas. Like, knight a2 is objectively a viable idea, but now the computer would show it instantly as one of the potential options.
Yeah. Knight to d7.
Yeah, and here I think I
After
played
a
queen to
10-minute
e2, which is also just a move that's trying to put some pressure on e5. Also someday trying to support potentially c4. Now, sometimes you have to be careful about rook f3 sacrifices, because then the knight can come into d4, so that's one of the themes.
Oh, he loves those sacrifices.
Yeah, so here I think Levon played a move which surprised me slightly during the game. I think I considered it a mistake, but he considered it a good move. I think we had like a bit of a philosophical difference in terms of our understanding of the position, but I kind of knew my position is fine because I prepared it. That being said, it's still very complicated. Like, once he played d4, as he did, the downside is that he fixes his pawn structure. These pawns become very weak, and if someday I achieve c3 in a way where I can, like, let's say, activate all my pieces to attack these central pawns, they're isolated double pawns, they're very weak. On the other hand, he has a space advantage, he has open f-file, he has ideas of a5, which is what he was trying to do. He was trying to stop any sort of ed5 ideas, and when the e5 pawn is potentially weak, and also he's taking the c3 square away from me.
Yes.
So I said this was the main plan, but then if knight c1, there's a5 ideas. So that's why I played this move. I want to stop a5 by opening up the idea of rook takes b5.
So it's a preventive move. Did you have any active plan behind this move, rook to b1?
The plan is still knight c1, knight b3, and c3.
That's the plan.
I want to first get the knight to a square where it controls d4, and then play c3. And after that, there's no hole on the d4 square because my knights and bishop defend it.
Were you not worried that whenever you go c3, maybe he's going to be able to set up a rook on the d file and then put enough pressure on d3 to deter you from playing c3?
If I get my knight to b3, that's not a problem because I can also always jump into c5.
Okay.
Also, I wasn't worried generally because I kind of knew the position. Not like in huge detail, but I knew the idea. I knew that this was an idea. I knew that knight c1, b3 was idea.
Because you did spend a lot of time on this one, close to 30 minutes.
Yeah, but I still knew the ideas in this position. Yeah. Like, it's not very concrete, so it's not like you can analyze everything, but I knew the themes.
Yeah.
So he brought the knight over to a4. I did my plan. And I think this is the moment where I really expected knight c3. I thought knight c3 is super critical because after the forced trade, he'll want to bring the knight to d4. And he'll want to create this kind of like, once he gets this pawn here, then this pawn is no longer a weakness. And then he has some potentially very dangerous pawns. Actually, I had a game very similar to this against Levon from the Candidates 2016 from a different line of the anti-martial. And it was the same structure. There, I think he even sacrificed a pawn, basically just to get the potential queenside play, because then at some point, these pawns are strong.
Yeah.
Very long term. So I was considering this position a lot. I was worried about it. And to my great relief, he didn't go for it. Of course, black is not better here, but it's definitely the correct way to play. And I even remember telling him after the game, you should have played knight c3. Instead, he did not play knight to c3.
Did he tell you why? Why he didn't?
I forget our conversation. But he actually thought he was better at this moment.
Really? Wow.
I think he played rook f7 here.
He played rook f7. Yes.
It's a bit slow, yeah. I mean, of course, to double and to potentially sacrifice on f3, it is a very logical idea, but it's a bit slow here.
Now he played rook c1.
Yeah, rook to c1. To me, this actually looks like a weird move now.
Yes, yes.
But definitely was based on some sort of calculation. I think I just wanted to play c3. So if rook f8, probably c3 was my idea. And I'm also dealing with this because now I can just play queen d1. So no problem. I don't have to take...
No bishop takes c3.
Like, if I try to do this and then queen e1, then suddenly knight d4 is like really an idea here.
Yeah.
Right?
Rook takes f3.
Because I can't take on
also an
c3,
idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if I do it here, he has no knight d4. And rook f3, of course, it does damage my structure. But generally speaking, with my king on h1, probably it's not like I'm going to get attacked. I probably won't get attacked. So I think now c3 was idea, and he wanted to stop it. So that's why he played rook to d8 here. He just really wanted to stop c3. And now the second point, I think, of this whole plan was knight g5, right?
Yes.
Because now once he takes, he can no longer play knight c3 attacking the rook. I mean, he can play knight c3, but it no longer attacks the rook. So I can just move my queen away and then eventually move my bishop back.
That's going to kick the knight away.
Yeah, like it's a closed position. So eventually I'm getting this. And once he trades his bishop off, his dark squares are like massively weak, like c5. I mean, this goes back, the knight will have to go back, then c3 at some point. His dark squares are too weak. And also his knight is a terrible piece.
And his attack is not going anywhere.
Oh, there's no attack.
Side. There's
Like,
no attack. It's
Yeah,
over.
I mean, besides the fact that I can already win material, like h3 just defends everything. I mean, at some point the queen comes into defense.
Yeah.
But of course, this is also hanging. So in general, he cannot take that knight. It's definitely very important for me that I'm winning a tempo because he does not want to take on g5.
So he played rook f6.
Yeah, and here I brought the queen in. I think this was quite important, right? I played here
h6.
and then brought the knight back.
Looks a bit, out of play, this queen.
I would say the
On
opposite
h5.
because if you think about the position, with the queen on h5, he cannot move these pieces at all. He can't move his queen or his knight, which means that he is fixed to the e5 pawn. But also, if I ever attack this pawn again, for example, knight a5, or I take away a defender, this becomes a real weakness.
Yeah.
And also, he can't push his kingside pawns because g6 hangs a pawn. g5, the queen will be like outposted there, stopping g4. So here he's a bit stuck. Like knight c3, he doesn't want to do anymore.
Now the more I look at it, yeah.
Yeah, like also you can imagine after knight c3, if I take, then there's even ideas of at some point d4. Like, because there's like e5 stuff. So there's a lot of tactics here, but also with the queen on h5, he can't really play knight d4. The queen is just really ideally placed here. And I also have knight c5 ideas and so on. So I think knight c3 is out of the question at this point.
Beautiful. And he played
Rook f8.
rook d8. Makes
Yeah.
a lot of
And
sense.
here I think I
maybe
played
at some
rook-
point he's trying to go rook takes f3.
Yeah, maybe. I think I played rook f1 here, right?
Rook f1, rook f7.
So I had a plan here with rook f1. The plan was I defend this, over-defend this f2 pawn, and then I bring my knight here. Like, this was a very clear plan. Then I kick the rook back, and then I have tactics involving bishop h6 or something, right? If he takes on f3, this actually leads nowhere because then I play king h1, rook g1, and the queen on h5 is actually a nice attacking piece. So he doesn't want to sacrifice. Sorry, rook's here.
He needs to find a way to bring this knight back, but it's so far away.
There's nothing
from
to
the
do
action.
with it. And also knight c3 here, I can even ignore it. I can just play rook a to e1. But also taking at some point is definitely on the cards.
Yes.
So knight c3 no longer has any purpose. So he's actually stuck here. He's completely stuck, and I have a safe position.
So he played rook f7. He started wasting some tempos, trying to improve the position.
Yeah.
Not a lot of ways to do so.
I played rook e1. I think basically, I wanted to deal with any knight c3 ideas. Also, the rook is very harmoniously placed here, and Now my plan is, as I mentioned, h3. So bishop f8, h3. Knight is coming to h2 and to g4.
Yeah. Now finally,
Yeah, that's why he played g6.
it's time to kick the queen
That's
away.
why he played g6, right? So I wanted to keep this pawn attacked. I think maybe queen g4 is better, but I played queen h4 basically to keep this pawn attacked.
Ask him another question. Yes. And he played queen e7. Maybe looking at rook takes f3.
Yeah, I think there was some rook
If you
takes.
take rook takes f3, right?
Was it like this? Bishop h6, rook f3, and then let me try to remember these lines of bishop g5, then just simply rook to f6, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, something like this just doesn't work out, I believe.
Yes. I mean, it's still something to calculate, but
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like you have enough. I can just defend.
yeah,
rook
yeah.
after that.
No, I
Sure,
definitely
so.
don't want to grab a pawn and then give away, because the pieces are more important than the rooks here. The rooks don't have so much scope, the pieces have a lot of scope. So I play queen g3,
Yes.
very logical attacking the pawn.
Bishop g7.
Yeah, so this is just defending it indirectly because he has rook f2 ideas,
Yes.
right? So here I suddenly realized that maybe this like knight h2 idea,
It's game time.
if I do something like this, then the knight comes here, but then suddenly he sacrifices the exchange. And then after I take, he takes with the pawn, correcting the structure, and my queen moves, and then suddenly he kicks the knight back, and then knight to e5 comes, and then queen moves, and knight c3 comes, and, you know, it's like, yeah, you grabbed material, but you really sacrificed a lot for this.
I think
So-
it's worse already.
I didn't want this, and that's why I kind of struck upon this very direct, concrete idea, which was attractive to me,
Nice.
which was knight to a5. So knight is attacked. I'm undermining this pawn. He has to take on a5, otherwise.
He doesn't have time to take on f3 first.
Yeah, rook f3, knight c6.
Because of knight c6. Very
That
nice.
doesn't work out for him.
So he took on a5.
And the point was not to take on a5 back. The point was to take on e5. So the knight is still attacked. This rook is attacked, but also this pawn is attacked. And I think I took a lot of time on this decision because it was it's one that really like came to mind for me, but it was still a very difficult one.
Out of 33 minutes that you had, knight a5, you spent 10 minutes on it. That's
Okay,
a lot.
okay.
Yes.
So basically he has to move the knight back
Yes.
because if I take on a5, I got it all for free.
Pawn up.
Everything falls apart. And my point was not to take on f7 because this would be selling I believe, my attack a little bit short, this type of position. Because he has the two pieces. He has knight c3 coming, c5 coming, like he has counterplay, yeah?
Yes.
So the point was I wanted another pawn on g6. I took this pawn, winning a tempo on the queen. And I kind of thought that at some point I would win the exchange back because his rooks are really weirdly placed. I think he had a bunch of moves for his queen. He probably chose queen d8 here. Is that
He
correct?
played queen d8. Yes.
Yeah, so now the point was I attacked the rook. So he doesn't want to give up the exchange in this version because now I have two pawns. So rook f5 and now f4. And his rooks can't really move so easily because knight like this can only go here. But then knight h4 comes, f5 comes, I'm actually attacking. The rooks are really well placed, the bishop's well placed. Knight h4 is on the cards.
He needs to get his knight somewhere, maybe to d5.
I think it was
or
correct to play
something
knight c3 here. Like
Knight
just to get
c3.
the knight active, yeah. I think that was correct, but I don't think he played this, yeah? He played
like that. No, he played
c5.
c5.
Knight to h4, attacking the rook.
Yes. And at this point, he had 3 minutes on his clock, move 34, and you had 8 minutes.
Yeah, so this is much easier for white to play. And here, knight to f3. So this rook on h5 is a very bad piece. And my plan is queen to g6, attacking the rook. The rook moves, I'm also attacking this, but also g4 is there as well. So he has to deal with the threat of queen g6. So king h7 was his move. Queen g4, still the same idea, attacking the rook. And I think that if rook f5, I have like some knight g5 stuff. I think there's some tactics like this, which would like interpose, right?
Yes.
So rook at f5 and a knight to h4.
Finally, you got the rook.
Not only attacking the rook, but also I'll include this check first and,
And
then
then
take
g4.
it. Yeah, yeah.
maybe. Nice, nice, nice.
So his rook is finally trapped after all that time.
And now he played this weird looking... Okay, I mean, the position already looks a little bit unstable. This is the problem. I cannot get this knight
The knight is still out of the
in
game.
play.
The reason he moves his
Completely
king
out
is
of play.
because he wanted to stop queen g6 before I take.
Yes.
But okay, any way I can take, right?
Take.
And any way I can put my queen in the game. I think this is what I played, yeah?
Yes.
Very logical move. g4 is coming. So you see, it's not just about the material balance, it's also the fact that I am actually crashing through.
Yes.
Queen
Because
e7.
if he gets a few more moves, I mean, queen e7, put some pressure, then if I manage to get this knight into play, maybe knight here,
Yeah,
knight
if
c6,
the knight were on d5 or something, then
d5
sure.
would be ideal.
Yeah, then you get counterplay. But of course, I'm already coming in through with g4, forcing the rook back.
Yes.
And then also I'm coming through with f5. And if I play f6 or bishop h6, it's absolutely game over instantly. So he doesn't really have much choice here. He played queen e8.
Yeah.
So now I can trade. And the problem for him is, of course, that now I have defended pass pawn on the 6th rank. Yes, put it near the goat. Goat.
Let's put the queen
Yeah,
also
good job.
next to the goat. Very nice.
So the bishop is forced back. And now again, if let's say his knight was on f7, he actually would be probably doing fine. So it's about time. So I went forward again. The rook goes forward and rook invaded. Now bishop h6 is a threat and my pawn is promoting. But also I have ideas of this and this.
He's just simply not in time to defend everything.
Yeah, he's just not in time. If you can imagine, for example, king h7 here, then I still have like bishop h6 and rook h6 ideas, right?
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, and then king g7 and probably rook f1 is winning, probably rook h7 is winning, followed by rook f1 and rook h8 and so on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to win here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very concrete. Again, if he could get his knights back into the game, maybe he would have a fighting chance here.
And he tried. He went knight b6.
yeah.
Yes. Bishop takes h6.
And knight d7, yeah?
Knight d7.
Okay, he's trying to bring defender back in time. And I think here I played rook to f1.
Rook f1.
Again, it's probably already, because now I have 3 pawns. So probably a lot of ways to win. 3 connected pass pawns.
Yeah.
But still you have to be careful because if pawns get blockaded, then they can become weak, right?
Trade.
Yeah, I think I traded back, didn't I?
Trade it back.
I mean, didn't change much, this trade.
Trade.
Okay, let's trade again. And so this, I think, did I play g5 here?
No.
No, rook h5. Rook
And
h5.
that finished the game.
Yeah, rook h5 is accurate. So the point is, of course, rook g5 is the threat. If the king goes to f8, it's checkmate. If the king goes somewhere else, f8 queen promotes. And if he captures, this is a nice, important check. And then finally, one of those, actually both of those knights in this case are lost. It doesn't actually matter that the second one is lost, but good measure, you also win on b7.
That's pretty sad. Yeah, this knight on b7 never came back into play.
Yeah.
Just completely died on that side of the board. Also, knight on a4. He missed that opportunity to go knight c3.
Yeah. That was
really
important.
Cost him.
No, I would say this is probably the best game I've ever played. This is like like some players that really thought I cheated in this game.
Really,
this is the best game I've ever played. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not easy to. I mean, like I don't try to be immodest with this, but yeah, it was like really a good game. Really good.
Were you hearing any of these talks during the tournament? Like,
No.
hey, is this guy
Only
cheating?
I found out
what's
years
happening?
later. I was actually shocked. I was, and also I kind of like I felt kind of sad as well. Like I was, because it also comes from colleagues who like I, respected and even was friendly with or like looked up to them in some cases.
Yeah.
So-
Check his pockets.
No, yeah, it's
Check the guy's
I
pockets.
was kind of when I heard about it from someone who I was working with, I was kind of saddened. But
If you would play this game right now and you would be an ascending player, let's say, yeah, there will be a lot
no,
of eyes on you.
I understand the suspicion. Of course, it's weird. It's weird to play to win 7 games in a row.
It just wasn't part of the culture back then, right? This cheating
Oh, it was.
ideas, it wasn't as much.
It wasn't as
embedded.
much, but it was.
Yeah.
And well, there's stories going back to early
Topalov,
2000s.
Kramnik, yeah.
Yeah, the Topalov Kremlin story is, of course, a famous one, 2006, Toilet Gate and all that.
Yeah.
So definitely there's always been suspicions. But yeah, that's also why I'm always a bit like wary. I don't want to like say someone's cheating because of course you never know for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't want to accuse people wrongly, but I do understand the games were suspicious. Yeah, no, I can kind of get behind it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, next one. Beautiful game against Levon, and now you're on 4 out of 4. And I mean, I haven't watched or rewatched the broadcast, but I can bet that Maurice was starting to get excited at this point.
I think so, yeah.
Probably everybody around St. Louis, around the chess world, was starting to get excited. In fact, we just got back from a dinner, and Anastasia Karlovich, working for the Grand Chess Tour, and she was mentioning that even she had some friends that were telling her that they're spending, during competition, their nights watching this game. They were on different continents. So definitely, it was very impactful, that moment when you were starting to pile up the points.
Yeah. No, the next game, I played Hikaru Nakamura.
Ooh.
This was our first game in the tournament, right?
Yes.
It was the 5th round, so it was a double round robin. So this would be the first tour, right?
Yes.
5 games.
You're
and then
finishing the
another 5.
first tour. Yes.
And Hikaru basically expressed that he needs to win this game to create tension in the tournament, to create his possibilities to win the tournament. He actually said this.
Yes.
He said, I just have to beat him.
Yes.
And he also had a very good score against me at the time. I think I had recently started to kind of fight back a bit, but early on, when I was younger, he had a dominant score against me. And at some point, for many years, I reversed that score to the point that I had a plus score against him. So we had some kind of trendy,
I remember
periods,
the Sicilians. Yeah.
Yeah, at some
You
point
were getting
I
him
fought
in the
back.
Sicilian.
No, there was
quite
a
lot.
period when I fought back for all the early times that he caused me grief. But yeah, he was a tough player for me, and he was definitely ambitious in this game. Actually, you're gonna have to tell me many of the moves in this game because this was a nearly 100 move game, I think,
Yes.
and I don't remember all 100
Yes.
moves.
D4, D5.
I remember that I played the Slav, which was kind of. I do remember preparing for this, and it was one of those let's surprise him ideas. Let's play Slav. I don't really play the Slav too much.
Knight f3, knight f6.
He played this knight d2, which is a very rare move. But I knew that, in general, in the e3 line instead of knight d2, there's this idea to play bishop e4 to provoke f3 and then to bring the bishop back.
Yes.
So white doesn't want to capture on e4 because that develops the black knight.
Yes.
So white feels obligated to force the bishop back, and then you've sort of provoked the weakening f3
Mm-hmm.
and e3.
Yes.
And basically, this position is very common, and white, of course, plays knight to c3,
With
right?
Knight on c3.
Not knight to d2.
And
So,
you
of course,
played
I understood this position with knight on d2 must be fine. The knight is worse on d2 than c3.
g3.
So g3 looks a bit unusual, but white is, it's kind of typical plans. I don't know, for people unfamiliar with it, of course, it looks weird to play all this stuff. Wait, did we?
I think we missed a move. Yes, yes.
Sorry, let's go back. Let's just go back a little bit. So knight b to d2, bishop to f5, knight to h4, bishop to e4, and now it was f3, bishop
F3,
g6,
bishop g6,
e3,
E6.
e6, g3, bishop to e7. Yes,
Yes.
my memory is immaculate for this game, clearly. a3. So this is unusual, but if people are interested in these types of lines, look at the Kramnik Topalov match from 2006, the one we mentioned. They were playing this sort of Slav positions. White was playing a3, g3 in every game.
Yeah.
White is making some little moves here and there. It's a bit unusual, but it's kind of typical.
The Slav somewhat fell out of fashion in recent years, especially at the elite level. It was at one point very, very much played.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of players were playing it. I even, at the 25, 50 level, I was experiencing a lot of Slav as well, fighting a lot against it. I don't remember exactly who brought that trend, which top player brought that trend, but it was definitely trendy.
There were many players, for example, Vichy in the 2008 World Championship match played the
Yes.
semi-Slav. That was a big one,
Yeah.
big moment. The Miran itself, Shirov was a big hero of it, Vichy as well, but Kramnik and Topalov had big back and forth battles, both of them playing the Slav. A lot of Topalov very often taking the white side, Kramnik taking the black side. There was a lot of big high-level Slav debates.
Yeah.
So the reason why white is kind of waiting around is because white wants to wait for castling before taking on g6, and white wants to wait for knight b7 before taking on d5. The point being that if you take back like this, the knight actually wants to develop here. So white is kind of waiting for something like this. So knight d7, cd5, cd5. Now Hikaru decided to eliminate this bishop, which at some point you should do. Bishop d3. Okay, white just wants to castle and say, I have the bishop here. So I struck in the center. I think a lot of these moves could be questioned. But anyway, castle. I think I probably castled here, right?
Yes.
Queen b3 and queen to c8. I think a lot of these moves can be questioned. I'm not sure I played this too accurately. And here he made a move which, to me now looks very logical, but at the time, for some reason, it surprised me. Knight to b1. Not sure what I was expecting because this is very typical. The knight comes to c3. And I responded in the same way. Take, and knight to b8. Okay, same idea. The knight has to go to c6.
Yeah.
Knight c3. And I think I played knight c6 here. I think logically.
Yes. Knight to c6.
So attacking the d4 pawn.
Bishop to e3.
He defends it. And now I defended the pawn in some manner.
Queen to d7.
Yeah. So my plan is rook c8, knight a5, and knight c4. His plan is to kind of try to keep me in check. So rook a1 looked logical. Of course, many moves are possible in this type of position.
Yes. Rook
Right.
fd8.
Rook fd8 for some reason.
Now,
Shame.
knight to e8.
That's why I played rook fd8. Okay,
There
so
we
my
go.
plan here, now I can tell you. Knight d8 is coming to c7, then to e6, and then bishop to f6, so putting maximum pressure on the d4 pawn. Now the reason why I can do this is because I have 3 minor pieces that can attack that pawn, and he has only 2 minor pieces that can defend it. The bishop, of course, is unable to do so since it's a light-squared bishop. Now, he would ideally like to put pressure on this pawn, but it's a bit difficult because the bishop has no route to get to the pawn so easily. So that's the idea of knight d8. I'm not sure if it's a good plan. It's a bit slow, but at least it's logical.
Well, it's a semi-closed position, I would say, and definitely a slow plan.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
And also one of the points is that after I play knight c7, which I assume I did,
Yes.
he cannot take on b7 because I will do something. I'm not sure
Maybe
which rook is better.
One of the rooks
Maybe,
to b8,
yeah.
right?
I think this rook is probably the best. And trap the queen on b7. So queen b7.
Out of the question.
Yeah, you can't take it. So bishop to f1. So he's both over defending this pawn, but also bishop g2, f4 is on the cards. So he's trying to get that bishop over. It's very much a fight of these isolated pawns.
Yeah. Bishop to f6.
Continuing the plan.
Now, a funny looking move, queen to a2.
You know,
But it makes a lot of sense.
I have this memory that at some point he should have stopped me from playing g5. This is kind of my memory of the position. I'm not 100% sure if it's still, like modern engines would still hold this up. But I have this feeling that maybe he should have at some point tried to...
Like try to do some h4 ideas.
Maybe f4. I'm not sure if...
F4?
F4 is one of those moves that, you know, you're not 100% sure about. But also, I think that he played queen a2 because he wants to play like bishop h3 here and avoid some knight takes d4 stuff.
That makes
So knight
sense.
to e6, bishop to h3.
Like for example, like this.
Yeah,
now you
maybe
have
there's some like
ideas of
tactics like
knight
this.
h4.
Maybe. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. If it's... Or maybe you can also take like this way first and then take again after.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is probably a justification of his move queen a to a2.
Maybe
And also b4 is coming, right?
b4, b5. Yep. g5.
Yeah, so I played g5 because I think I really wanted to stop him from playing f4 and bishop g2. It was very important to me that I get those dark squares. And maybe at some point this is very typical because then you can suddenly use the h-file. That's one way to try to use the h-file. So g6, king g7 is a plan.
Yeah.
Okay, b4, logical, what he did.
He's looking for some counterplay.
But again, if he... My knight can always go back to e7. It's not like a big deal, this b4 plan, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what did I do here?
g6.
Okay, yeah. As I said, yeah, this logical plan. Again, b5 is not a big deal. My knight can always go back to e7. So queen d2. I think I probably played king g7 in this position.
g7. b5.
Yeah,
knight
b5.
e7.
Yeah, so we're seeing the kind of the plans. And again, rook h8 is very often on the cards. And then knight e6 will no longer run into bishop h3. But also that h2 pawn, if it ever falls or gets attacked, it's a really serious weakness.
Yes. That's why.
So I think he
Played
was
this move,
starting to
bishop
get
e3.
outplayed in this moment. Like, things were starting to go wrong. So I played knight e6.
Now bishop to h3.
Yeah, but now I can play knight to f5.
Now you're forcing the change of the structure. more or
Yeah,
less.
and if you look at the position where he has the light squared bishop, this is a very weak pawn, but also his light squares are weakened. So this c4 square, potentially the e4 square if the f3 pawn ever gets removed or moved, right? So I think he had started to like drift even with natural play and get outplayed here.
Yeah.
Yeah, nevertheless, he has to like deal with the threat to this pawn and the bishop on e3.
Oh, sorry.
Of course, this is a weird structure, but my king is safe. f4. I think I played g4 here.
Yeah, he cannot get his knight to e5.
His knight's far away. My knight is also far away, but if it were ever to get to like c4, that would
It's
be
game
pretty,
over.
or even e4 to trade knights. My bishop is far better than his. So the only potential danger is that this f5 pawn is a serious weakness, but it's difficult for him to get to it.
And also he's overextended on this side.
Yeah,
now
definitely.
b4, b5.
His
Not
plan of
looking good.
b4, b5 has not really brought dividends, it looks like.
Yeah. g4, queen d3,
Yeah.
rook c8,
So he is attacking the pawn, but I am indirectly defending him because c3 is hanging.
rook c1, and now, as you mentioned, time to get the rook in. Rook c4.
Yeah, rook c4. Okay, so if queen to f5, then knight takes d4 comes. And this type of position, I'm not sure if I include knight f3 or not. Probably doesn't matter too much. I guess both ways are winning for black.
Rook's winning, yeah.
Because once you include that check, king moves, rook d7, then everything's hanging for white.
d4 is coming.
Yeah. So that's the tactical justification behind this play. So rook c4, so he has a very serious problem with this pawn. But also with this pawn, because if the knight moves again, then there's also this pawn hanging.
Yeah, and he did move knight to e2.
Yeah.
And Knight to c7.
Yeah, this is a good move. This is probably a very important move. It's quite logical. So if he takes everything, then I can simply take this pawn. I think I can play knight takes b5.
Even you were impressed with your play knight c7. You were like, yeah, good
Yeah,
move.
no, I mean, it looks like a natural move, to be honest, but it's not immediately obvious. But I think that this position, it's like, it takes some time to understand how bad it is for white, because you might think like I suddenly have a passed pawn or something, which of course is hanging for the moment, so that is an issue for white. But also, if this knight ever comes here, like white is just positionally completely busted because this pawn is blockaded, this bishop is very bad, and the queenside majority at some point goes forward, and also the knight on e2 is targeted with this. So here white will just have like very concrete problems. Also a3 is hanging, so and if a4, then we can take on d4 and go to probably winning rook endgame.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of problems for white here, and that was the justification for knight to c7.
And now he went back.
Yeah, he went back.
C3.
So again, his point is that if knight takes b5, f5 is hanging in the end. Take, and I really need to preserve that pawn because it also holds g4, it holds everything together.
And now without the knights, your king is not as safe also.
Yeah.
If we
No,
exchange the
once
knights
that
on
falls,
b5.
my king is not safe at all. And we'll actually see that theme play out a bit later in the game.
Play the rook to c8.
Yeah, rook to c8.
Now a big move by him, h3.
Well,
I remember this moment when he played this move, h3.
I think he was in a desperate situation. And the reason why is because, like, if you give black time, then things will fall apart. Like, I can already start to play king g6 and then knight takes b5 at some moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, white is already in a desperate situation. So you have to get some sort of counterplay. So he played h3 with the idea that if I take, then this pawn, it's strong, but it can also be captured with like king h2 or something, right?
That's what he did. Take and king to h2.
Yeah, so he's just trying to get some counterplay, and eventually he wants to get g4. He just wants to open up the king side because he needs some source of counterplay. So it's a very logical plan that he went for.
Take the pawn.
Yeah.
Yasser was probably very proud.
Yeah, you have to take back. So we take back.
He took on h3. That's
And-
a funny looking move.
Yeah. So
Problem
this
is-
is very very tactical because it's just queen b2 here wins a piece.
And if you keep
Yeah.
going, it doesn't really matter. You don't get the perpetual.
Yeah, I think the problem for white is that in this type of position, just going to make sure,
There's
but
a c8 square.
you
always
actually
covered.
don't, you only have one check. And if you give this check, if you do this, which actually looks scary because suddenly this is a mating threat, after rook h1, your king is on g4. Yeah, actually, I think is rook h4 winning? Yeah, maybe. No, I don't think it is because king hides on h5. But the problem is you no longer have queen g4 checks, so you don't actually have checks here. So probably like queen h2 or something is just game over.
Mate.
Right? So this is the point that once the king is on h2, I was now free to capture this pawn on b5. That's the tactical justification.
That makes sense.
So where was this? Here. No, here. Yeah.
Yes, and pawn on f5.
So that's why I
took
played
this
king
one.
h3.
King h3, and
And
now
now f5 is hanging.
you had to.
So I just went back. I don't think I
drop.
have to, but okay. It's
defend this.
it's clear. I'm a pawn up at this point. I have won a pawn. That's what I got. It's not the end of the world for white necessarily, but he cannot attack this. I can simply start to expand on the queen side. I can even trade rooks and enter probably a winning position like that. But still, there's a technical task ahead of us. Already, we've entered the technical phase, right?
Yeah. At this point, both of you guys knew that you're probably winning objectively, but you still had to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And the king is still somewhat, let's say, has potential to be unsafe. Rook
Yeah.
g1, g4,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. King to g2, b5, excuse me.
Yeah, this is, as I mentioned, the plan is just, let's push the pawns. I don't know how to break through, so I'll just go do it slowly because white has no immediate threats or anything.
Yeah. Rook to b1, a6.
Yeah, okay, just
Simple.
defending this pawn, keeping
play.
it solid. Maybe also a5 is a fine move, for example. Why not? But okay, a6 is very solid. You can't really criticize this move.
Yeah, and this was move 40, by the way. a6 was move 40.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to make
that's a
time
safe move. Also, I'm threatening rook c3 and maybe grabbing another pawn, right? So very safe move to overprotect this pawn.
Yeah, don't change the character of the position if you don't have to at move 40. a6, rook to c1.
Yeah, okay. Hikaru at this point had no plan, right? He was out of ideas.
Queen e6.
Okay, so here I already saw that there's ideas of queen to e4. Probably I spent some time calculating this move. So of course I want to trade queens. That would lead to a purely technical position. And for him, it's a little bit difficult to, let's say, play bishop f2 because there's like rook to c1 or something, right?
Yeah, rook takes c1 and
Yeah.
transition into a
But
completely
then we
different
enter a different phase. Queen against 2 rooks. That's always a question. That really depends on the concrete nature. But his king is weak in that situation.
Yes, and your
So-
king is not.
That depends a lot. That
Yeah.
depends on if he can get his queen active. But that's something that you have to calculate move by move.
Well, he played it.
Yeah.
Rook takes c1.
Rook e6, fe6, and g4. Because, like, what's black threatening here? I think the threat is pretty simply just to bring one of the rooks down to c2,
Rook b2,
and then
rook
slowly
c2.
rook b2, and yeah. So he needs to get counterplay. Yeah.
Game over.
No, once you pin that bishop and start to attack it again, and probably like queen to e2 or something like that, I can probably just defend this pawn. Like maybe rook c6, and then rook c2 is on the cards, again with this threat of bishop takes d4 after that.
Yeah.
Most likely. So he doesn't have an easy way to get to the king, so of course he's opening things up.
Yes.
Now if fg4, he's probably happy to play queen e2, and then suddenly queen g4 comes with check.
Which you played.
But I think that here was the moment where I just was winning with one move, which was, I think it was here, right? Bishop h4 just wins in one move. And
That's nice.
the point being that if I attack his queen first,
That's
queen
nice.
moves only has 2 safe squares. Either one is met with this or this, and I win the queen.
Yeah.
And bishop h4 introduces the threat of rook to c2. So if I do rook c2 first, then g5, right?
Yes.
Is possible. So that's why first bishop h4, and this is game over. You resign immediately. I didn't see this part.
Hmm.
And I think instead I took on g4, right?
You did.
Which was a mistake. And this is why the game lasted for like forever instead of ending right there.
So that's why this is move 45.
Yeah, my tactical vision was off.
And then it went all the way to move. I'm trying to figure it
9
out.
meters.
67, not that bad.
What? Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my god, I had this like memory of it being super long.
No, not that long. Okay,
Okay.
let's see. Let's see how it went. So,
queen e2 with
King
the threat
f7.
of queen g4. Okay, I don't want to give up e6. Now queen g4 is allowing here, but now he can go back, right?
queen d3.
Queen e3. Threat of queen h7. This is a problem.
Yeah. And you allowed it.
Yeah,
Went
rook
here.
Rook c2. Yeah.
Yes. And now you had to start calculating all these
Yeah.
checks.
Now you have to start calculating checks. This is not too much fun. So queen check. I think I went
King
to f8.
King e8.
Oh, sorry, e8. Yeah.
Now Hikaru
Yeah.
was...
No, because if he
was
like
trying.
keeps giving checks forever, then probably my king eventually escapes to d6, and bishop d4 is a deadly threat. So this is purely, king on e8. He has to create ideas of queen g8 and queen e6 with check. Everything has to be with check.
I mean, if I have this position, I will already start feeling a little bit unstable.
Yeah, but I think this is a moment where I can take on d4, right?
Yes, you did.
And I did. And he gave a check. I don't think it matters very much, queen g8 or queen g6. Either way, I have to go here.
No, king d8.
King d8, yeah?
Yes.
I'm trying to think of why. Maybe king d7, I thought fe6.
Maybe f6
King
and you cannot
c7.
run, right, to c7.
Still can... Oh, we have the rook's hanging. Okay.
Yes.
So that's why I go to d8 first. Okay.
You provoke the check.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
That's
if queen
nice.
g8, then king d7,
That's probably what you were
then
calculating.
fe6, then king c7, and then after queen here, the king hides. No more checks, and you lose the f2 bishop, which is still pinned.
That's so funny. You remember the calculation that you had for queen to g8,
Yeah.
but not what he played with queen,
Queen
g6.
g6. So I go to d8, yes?
Yes.
Yes, and there's only one logical check here, queen to g8.
He played queen takes c6 at
Yeah,
this point.
but in this case, I go to c7.
Yes.
And then again, if here, and now I don't have to hide on b6, probably hiding on b6 is fine, but just b8, yeah? And then
B8
you
finishes the job.
And then the thing is that once you lose that bishop, you can never really attack my king again. So
And you get mated in a couple of moves.
yeah. So he took on e6 just to keep the king sort of at least in some sort of checking zone.
Well, queen d6 and
Yeah, queen d6 is already threatening. Well, queen d5 threatens to win a piece, but let's say after I take this,
which you did.
king g3. Now I think I made a simple move. So I was spending some time, I remember, calculating like rook c3 and trying to get a checkmate or something. But I think instead I just made a very simple move.
You played rook c3.
First rook c3, yeah?
Yes. Rook c3, king g4, rook g2. You went for the checks. King f4, rook f2, king g4. You repeated once.
And now I brought the king to safety, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, this is what I remember. I played king c7, yeah?
Yes.
And so basically what I wanted was to have a position like this. King here, rook here, bishop here. No more checks. Once that's the case,
You build a cocoon.
yeah, you just build like a kind of home for, and it's pretty easy to see that like everything's kind of defended. So whatever checks you give, the king eventually runs to a7. The bishop drops back here, and then a rook comes to c7. And
That's the one move you need. You need to just get the bishop to b6.
But yeah, well, not with the king on c7 because queen e5. But yeah, in general, that's what you need.
Right.
But also, for example, like what can really make me feel secure is that in this position, I can just play like rook c4, and also I can hide on a5 and a4 if need be.
All of your pieces.
Yeah, I just want to keep things defended.
Yeah,
so
that's nice.
Running with the king was was not a difficult decision, I think.
Yes, queen e7, king b6, queen d8, rook c7, and he picked up a pawn.
Yeah, because if queen b8, then I think rook b7. I remember calculating this, and then my king hides here, and then the bishop goes back.
You're hiding.
So that's why he at this moment decided to take a pawn.
And it's not about the pawn, but just not allow the bishop to get to b6, basically.
Yeah,
not allow this construction.
But I can just play bishop c5 here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, whatever checks he has, they're very temporary.
Yeah. Queen to d8.
Queen d8, he's just trying to stop the checks, but king b7.
King b7.
I think among other moves, like it's already game over.
f6.
Did I take a pawn here? I took the pawn, yeah?
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, it's fine to be safe, but he has only one check, so I can just take and go back, yeah?
Check.
Check. King
b6.
a7. Oh, king b6 first, okay.
Queen d8 back.
And I probably also just went back, yeah?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. And yeah, now I'm going to play king b7. If you check king a7, and then eventually pawns move forward. That's the basic plan.
And he played.
Yeah,
b8.
here, back, or didn't. Yeah,
Finally.
king a7. And now the pawns will move forward.
Queen d5, bishop b6, everything's
now
safe.
no more checks. No, at this moment you can resign, but I think he still played on a little bit.
King g5.
Yeah, now probably b4 is pretty clean.
Rook c7.
Ah, okay, rook c7.
You're trying to go rook c5.
Very accurate.
King g6. And now b4.
Okay, now b4.
Queen e6.
Yeah.
Bishop to d4.
Yeah, and now rook f6. But okay, at this moment, like everything wins and it's very safe. So this was an important. Yeah, after this, I think the tournament victory was pretty much like this was the sign.
Like you knew at this point,
Yeah,
you're running away with it.
At this moment, I don't think there's any hope for anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. And
But this was the toughest game for sure. This was a very long one.
you would say so.
Yeah, a lot of calculations. At some point in the middle game, I was a bit worse. In all the other games, I was kind of just better out of the opening.
Yeah.
And then just won. Like in this game, I was actually on the back foot slightly at the start of the game.
That makes sense. Right. And as you were mentioning, Hikaru was perhaps also trailing and maybe showing some signs that he wants to be the one who will be able to maybe get first or second.
And as a difficult opponent for me, then he was also, you always have that thought in the back of your head as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one. This concludes the first part of the event, right? First 5 rounds. Now we're going into reverse colors, same opponents.
Yeah. So now we start again with Veselin.
Round
but this time
6
I'm playing with
Veselin.
white
Yes.
rather than black. We saw that game, the first round. So again, e4. Okay, I was mostly an e4 player in those days.
You were exclusively an e4 player. I
Yeah,
would say.
almost exclusively. So e4 and Veselin decided to play Sicilian. So this is why I kind of bring up luck in chess, because again, Veselin played a line that he doesn't really play too much of the Taimanov.
Yes.
And somehow recently we had checked exactly this line. It's very unusual that this happened. That every game you get your preparation in, but somehow we got our preparation in.
Did you check this line with your coach during the event?
Actually, I don't remember when it was, but very recently we had checked it. So it was kind of fresh in my memory. I don't know why he went for it. I mean, he was a Najdorf player. Again, just like Maxime, he was a Najdorf player. He went for something else.
Yeah. Maybe you were already starting to build like some sort of a reputation, especially after the start of this event, of a very well prepared player, and he was just trying to avoid your
That's
preparation.
possible. I'm not sure because I didn't speak to him, even though I was on quite good terms with Veselin. I didn't speak to him about this, but it was an unusual choice. Even this a6 line that he played is quite unusual. Bishop d3. So okay, again, there's a lot of theory behind this whole thing. Rook to e1 here, yeah.
Bishop to e7.
e5. So with rook e1, you waited for bishop to come to e7. So now this is difficult to defend because short castle allows bishop h6.
That's a very typical pattern.
Yeah. Winning
bishop
material.
h6.
So black cannot do that, which means that it is difficult for black to deal with this. You have to weaken yourself in some way. g6, king to f8, even bishop to f8, I think. Even g5, moves like this are possible. But all of them are kind of either losses of time, you lose the right to castle, or something.
Yeah, it feels like what's the name of the winnower? The French, yeah.
Yeah, similar to the French, you sometimes lose your right to castle there. So knight to a4 is a typical idea because you are very often preparing c4 in the long term and stopping, like sometimes c5 is met with c4.
Yes.
Now here you have to be a bit careful because there are queen a5 ideas sometimes. And that's actually what he did in this position.
Yes.
It attacks
he,
the rook.
Played queen a5 first.
Yeah.
Queen
It attacks
A5?
the rook on
Yes.
e1. Rook e2. Now this knight is defended, but it's a very tenuous defense, yeah? So h5, queen f4.
That's the focus of his next few
And then
moves.
the point, this was the prep. Bishop d2. Otherwise, you lose that knight on a4.
Yeah.
But here you attack the queen. The queen cannot take here because of queen takes, so then you wouldn't win the queen. And if you take here, which I think is a correct move, then we get this endgame where black has a, potentially very weak f4 pawn.
That's very nice. That's very
So
nice.
this was the prep.
Just to go back a couple of moves, if you do start with queen d4, c5, now bishop d2 doesn't work anymore because of queen takes
Yeah,
d2.
yeah, for example.
And you cannot take back with a queen.
Yeah, that's why the queen should be on f4. That's
Yeah.
why we played bishop d2 first.
That's how you lose the piece, basically. Very nice. So this was still preparation. And I see it on my screen, 1 hour and 32 minutes for him. But he was in his preparation also.
I'm not
1
sure
hour
if he was. He
34.
was thinking at this moment.
Yes. This must have been bishop to d2. Definitely threw him off. Queen to c7.
Yeah, he brought the queen back. And I think I also brought the queen back first to g3.
To g3, h4.
Yeah, I provoked h4 and I went to g4.
That's right.
So I really wanted this square as sort of like an outpost. And it was very important. I think that this was a critical move. That this tactic, I have bishop c3, and this is, like at some point I was on my own. So I think I calculated this quite a bit. Because, okay, I'm winning this rook. This
Yes.
rook is gone. But in the endgame,
Your bishop is getting trapped.
he can actually trap this here. Of course, it's on risk for white because you can always like trade off this bishop, and you will definitely get a few pawns for the bishop on h8, which will be lost. But I do remember calculating this position, and I don't remember exactly what my conclusion was, but I probably thought in some way that white is better,
Yes.
and which is probably the truth. But definitely, I think this was a critical variation, so I was mostly worried that he would go for this. Of course, always makes more sense to first calculate a capture of a central pawn like that.
Yes. It's funny because you still had 1 hour and 31 minutes at this point.
Are you sure that this is like...
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah, no,
thinking... But maybe I was still in my prep. That's possible, yeah.
Rook to e1.
Sorry, the
We
rook
will
is
we
on
will
e2.
go. We will reach that point when you made a long thing. When you were subject to a long thing.
Yeah, he chose not to take on e5.
Yes. Let's see, because I'm getting lost a little bit. Queen to g4. Rook to g8. There we
Yeah,
go.
now he's threatening knight takes e5. Also, he deals with the threat of bishop takes g5, defending the pawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very logical.
Rook to e1.
Yeah, so defending the e5 pawn, also very logical.
c5.
Yeah, and now I want to deal with the threat of c4 with c4. on
That's
my
the
own.
move that you spent 20
Yeah.
minutes on.
Maybe I was thinking about b3 here. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember my calculations. But c4 is by far the first move which comes to mind. So probably was the move I mostly calculated here.
Take.
Yeah, again, he could have maybe played bishop b7 first, but okay, taking is also a move.
Bishop to b7.
Bishop to b7. I think I probably took quite a bit of time at this moment. That's what I remember, but
h3.
h3, yeah. Okay, h3 is just kind of a logical move, giving the king some luft in the future.
Mm-hmm. Rook to d8. He's trying to activate his pieces
Yeah,
as well.
and also now
Still
knight
his-
takes e5 is an idea, because then the bishop on d2 is targeted, right?
Oh, yeah. And you
So
have
that
to address
explains bishop c3.
that. Bishop to c3.
Now, I was a bit hesitant about this because it takes away a square from my knight, which I want.
Now bishop c6 ideas.
Yeah, on the other hand, I can get the knight back like this. And if you just look at this position from a purely strategic point of view, of course, white has a better structure. But it's a dynamic structure. So if black can get a knight to d4, and then if this queen is ever chased off this square, then suddenly maybe some counterplay can come.
g4.
Now, I think he said that his plan was to try to get the knight around here. He even mentioned this. But he couldn't find a way to do it, so he brought the knight the other route. As I mentioned, the knight comes to d4. Very logical move. And I really needed to stop this knight c6 idea, so I played an excellent move here, rook to e3, very important move. This is purely prophylaxis against knight c6, and luckily for me, he played knight c6, which was a losing mistake. And the reason why I played rook e3, I sacrificed on e6.
Ooh.
That's because the rook is coming to f3. So this
He
wins the
missed
pawn.
this. Wow.
He didn't miss this. I'll show you what he missed in a second. Now, he shouldn't have captured. But if he does this, which is probably the best move, then I have grabbed a pawn. And I can do this. I just drop the bishop back.
If he tries to go for the material.
Yeah, I think I just sacrificed the exchange. I think he can even like include queen c6 maybe. Because, okay, this immediately, I think there's just queen f5.
Queen f5 just finished.
So I think he includes queen c6, b3, and then knight c2. And from my memory of the game, first of all, there might be rook to f3.
Rook f3, it looks
that's very tempting.
good.
But I think that it's possible just to sacrifice the exchange in some manner. Because white has like very long-term attacking prospects. So how we would sacrifice the exchange, I'm not 100% sure. But even a move like knight b2 is tempting, I have to say. Like, kind of tempting. There is also e6 in this position.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a tempting move. And he would probably have to play after taking on e3. Okay, let's say take on e3.
Probably.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have to be worried about rook d1. Maybe it's a bit scary. That's why I'm wondering about this. But yeah, I think I was just planning to sacrifice the exchange. And to be honest, I don't remember my calculations.
Yeah.
Now, if the move is knight b2 here, it actually very well could be, because this looks like a very tempting
But also rook f3, right?
Yeah, this is the question.
Let's see.
This is the question for sure.
Takes f7, king e8.
Because bishop e1, there's rook to d1. That's a bit concerning.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Now, if you can simply play f3 here, it could actually be the case that
But can I take on e1?
rook d1.
And now take on e7? How is this transition?
So take. What transition is it?
You take. That's. Yeah, you take on e5 at the
Yeah.
end as well.
I'm not sure. Okay, this is kind of rare moment when we're analyzing on our own. But this is an interesting position. Actually, let's just think about this for a second, because I'm kind of curious myself. No, after sacrificing the rook, so the knight is on e1.
And we might as well do
Rook
some,
is on g8.
Some prep for tomorrow's Rapid and Blitz.
So if I stop anything involving this g2 square, and now I have threats of queen h5, how attractive is this? I have to say, it doesn't look very... Wait, no, there's still a piece missing. There's a piece, a bishop on c3.
You don't take on
important.
e1.
Yeah. How attractive is this? Because if we're given time to take on e1, that's very good. But rook d1 is coming.
So let's see. Rook to d1, you go king h2 or king f2.
Okay,
Maybe
and
king
king f2 allows knight d3. This is starting to look a little bit sketchy for sure. Definitely a bit sketchy here. So I probably would not want
Maybe
to
some
allow
bishop
this.
c8 ideas.
I'm not sure bishop c queen h5 is that what you want? Because then you just opened up the threats involving rook f6.
Yeah, you get mated there.
So
Yeah, and king d8 I cannot run because of bishop a5.
yeah, your king is actually in the main net. So this, it's possible it's good. It's also possible that it's simply bad for white here. There's definitely we're taking on some degree of risk.
Yeah.
But I think that this was critical, and yeah, so it was this position, right? When I had this queen c6, b3, knight c2. Maybe he missed this queen c6. Just wondering, because now I'm like very curious if there's some like ideal way. You know, maybe it is simply knight b2 here.
Let's see. I'll try to help you. Queen c6, b3, knight c2. e6 is the best move.
e6 is best, yeah?
Yes, instead of...
And knight takes e3. By the way, are we taking it with the f-pawn? This is actually what I'm wondering about. Maybe this is very strong. Because then we can block with e4.
No, we just take with the rook.
With the rook is correct. And if rook d1, then simply bishop to e1, yeah?
Bishop to f1.
Oh, okay. Actually, that's completely winning, because then
nice.
you just win the rook.
Oh, actually... Oh, that's a nice move.
So f6 is correct. And now is knight b2 very strong at this moment, is what I'm wondering.
Let's see. Yeah, knight
Yeah.
b2. Best move.
Yeah, this is because it's just very slow. Like you bring the knight to d3, then you play f3, and then you just mate at some point. Like you take it slow. White has control here.
And I don't have any counterplay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, this was definitely the best chance, because you see it is quite practically complex. So instead, after bishop e6, he gave me a little bit more of a gift. He took.
Yes.
So what did he miss? He thought king comes to g7. Of course, rook f3 is why the rook came to e3. And king g7, what he missed is queen h5, threatening checkmate.
So I go
You
here.
defend and simply rook to f6. So threatening checkmate here, also in a variety of other ways, this is also going to be mate. And so on, this is going to be mate. So it means that black will have to take.
Probably have to take, right?
But okay, this is immediately game over. I think
G5.
there are probably a variety of ways to win this type of position, but okay, this is completely done, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
you
not
don't
much.
get any time to sacrifice.
Yeah, I don't think the sacrifice. Yeah,
take.
here there's queen h4, and the immediate sacrifice I think we can safely take, and then the king goes back to f1, and that's it.
Knight to d4, king to
f1, and that's
no
it.
more checks.
So I think this is pretty straightforward calculation, and that's why it's a bit strange that he allowed this. Of course, he allowed this whole sacrifice because it's clear that you cannot go to g7 based on this simple queen to h5 and rook to f6, which, okay, it's maybe not so simple, but not too difficult. And on e8, the problem is queen e6 comes with tempo.
That's why he
So
played.
the rook is attacked.
Yep.
And you really have nowhere to run. Yeah, you have to go to g7, because I think if rook to f8, we can simply take, king takes, then we give a check, probably among other things, maybe also this check. And then if the king goes back, then I think we had probably like e6 or something. It's like usually the king gets cut off in some manner like this. There might also be like other more accurate ways.
I think this looks very good.
But
Very
yeah,
promising.
okay, this looks like completely crushing, right?
I think you have to go here.
Well, okay, this doesn't do
Check.
anything. Yeah. And here, okay, there's like...
There must be a checkmate.
No, it's like a million ways to win, like bishop f6 followed by e7 is crushing and so on.
Yeah.
And so everything falls apart. So that's why he played rook g7 after queen takes e6. And queen to h6.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is what I did.
Yep. Knight to d4.
Yeah, and here, this moment I spent some time on. Actually, can you check how much time it was? Because this was a very nice move.
You spent about 12 minutes.
Yeah, this was a really nice move. I played e6. And I just like remember this, like you cut the board in two. It's the king has only one way to escape. He's ready to sacrifice his rook just to get some counterplay, but you don't care about the rook.
The mate is
Yeah,
coming.
okay, queen h5 is mate. So e6 is preventing the escape of the kings. And if it takes, we simply take back, down a rook, but just like think, here, checkmate. So the rook has nowhere to go.
Yes.
Now, if the black tries some counterplay, we are threatening checkmate with queen h5, king f8, and among other things, probably queen h8, rook g8, bishop g7, among other things.
This is very nice, yeah. Everything. Oof.
That's already made.
You don't even take that.
Yeah. So,
that's
so the
brutal.
problem for black is that your king is cut off, and if bishop to f8,
Don't tell me you go e7.
I don't think it was e7 here. I think it's actually, is this what he did? It was something like this that he did.
He did play.
I think it was just like queen h5 and then king e7, bishop g7 or something
Yes.
like this.
Yes.
I think it was like very simple because then queen f7 comes and then e7, and this is like pretty, like I'm not even down much material anymore.
Yeah.
So.
He resigned after
But yeah,
bishop
okay.
takes g7.
This is checkmate, so that's it. It's over.
Very nice. This was after that marathon against Hikaru. This was more of a miniature. Sure, he missed stuff, but there were a lot of complications throughout the game. A lot of pitfalls for both players.
I think it was, he played like in a rather naive way. Like,
Yeah.
I played rook e3 and he just went for like a knight c6, allowing bishop e6. It was rather strange.
How was he doing at this point in the tournament? Do you remember?
Up and down, but
Let's see.
he was one of the players who wasn't doing too poorly, but he was up and down. He had lost a lot of games. and-
50% actually.
Yeah, it was up and down.
Yeah. Yeah, 4 decisive results.
Yeah, he beat Hikaru in some crazy game where he was dead lost with the white pieces in some Archangelisk.
Yes.
Check the
By the course.
by the course.
By the course. Go by the course. All right. Final game. Game number 7.
This was the most ridiculous of the games. I mean, like they got progressively more ridiculous what my opponents were doing.
Oh, I remember this. Yes.
This one
I
was
remember this.
like Magnus was actually laughing about this game. Like, what is going on here?
Yes.
No, because the thing is, I wasn't at all trying to win this game. Like
No.
at all. I really wanted, because I was very close to tournament victory. It would be the first, maybe not the first super tournament, but the first tournament with Magnus where I got clear first, I believe. Because I had played some tournaments where we shared first, or where we went to a playoff, like 2012 Bilbao, went to playoff. Tal Memorial, I was like caught at the last moment. So a lot of tournaments where it was very close, but I didn't quite match. So this would be the first tournament, and I really wanted to win this tournament and not mess it up. So that's all I was thinking, like, just don't mess this up.
Don't mess it up.
And Maxime plays d4, again, trying to, surprise me, rather rare for him.
If you win this one, you clinch. If you make a draw, you clinch.
No, I don't clinch. Even winning this did not clinch.
Really?
Because Magnus was 3 points behind with 3 games to go.
Okay.
After I won this. But, it's like every draw gets you closer. Because you understand that if I draw the rest of my games, +6 is going to,
It's going to do it.
It's going to do it. So...
this was the triangle, right? Was it triangle? No. D5.
Oh, sorry. I started with d5.
C4, E6, knight C3, bishop E7.
Yeah, I was messing with this kind of this sort of QGD move order, allowing C takes D5.
Yeah, and back then it was kind of like a new stuff.
Yeah, I think like he was playing rook C1 here to avoid knight to F3, and some stuff which seemed important at the time. This move order stuff complete nonsense now these days, to be honest. Like I'm pretty sure that like C5 here just equalizes like super easily. Instead, I think I played knight to D7.
Yeah. Now
This
C5.
move order stuff, like these days, I wouldn't understand what we were thinking, because these days, like you play rook C1 and your opponent just instantly plays C5, and there's literally no point to white's play.
Yeah.
But back in those days, knight to F3, people didn't play C5. They played knight BD7 for some, which is of course a decent line, and then C5.
Yeah.
And so Maxime was trying to get rook C1, knight BD7.
That was the Vichy versus Magnus, right?
Yeah. Vichy won a nice game against Magnus in the 2014 World Championship.
Yeah.
And here you avoid knight to H5, like something like this. It was some kind of silly business. I didn't even want to play knight H5.
No, I remember I was looking at these lines. They were quite funny. quite funny. Bishop to D3, obviously.
But did I play knight to E4 at this moment?
Yes.
Yeah, knight to E4 here. Yeah, which again we were both on our own. Neither of us knew this position.
Yeah.
Bishop D3. So took.
F5.
Oh, sorry, F5.
F5 first.
This was the point. Okay, I don't even remember the point of this play.
Knight F3. C6.
Yeah. Also, I think that Black's play is very risky here.
Uh-huh.
I feel like this whole F5 C6 business is really. I would not be in a hurry to play this way. With the bishop on 4, weakening E5, but it was some sort of trend. I remember there was some games of Geary and.
Try to open up the position fast.
Yeah, you just plant the knight on E4 and fortify it and try to play aggressively.
Knight E5. Take. And bishop to F6.
And basically, I want to achieve E5. So if his bishop moves, I want to prepare E5 after that, like queen E7, maybe not queen E7, maybe rook E8 and E5. And if he takes on F6, queen F6, then also E5 is coming.
Mm-hmm. That's what he did. And knight to E2.
Yeah, so he's trying to avoid the trade of knights. For example, if like castle or something, and then I can play E5 immediately, or take on C3 and then E5, but he wants to leave the knight as a target, saying, yes, it's advanced, but at some point I play F3, kick the knight away and win time. And of course, E5 is very logical here.
Yes. E5.
And here is what, this is a terrible move. I actually remember this moment clearly, because of course I was expecting that he takes and plays, or he castles or something, but he tries to like play this position with the knight on D4. Okay, something like this,
Yeah. And at some point I would assume you were thinking about trying to break
F4 and
with
taking
F4.
on E4 and this sort of thing. Maybe he castles first. This is also very logical, right? Castle first. You just castle and then you think.
Yeah.
If E4, knight D4, and F4 you're not too afraid, because to start with you can always take on E4. I mean, it's nothing too scary for white.
Yeah.
So I kind of actually I think that I was planning something involving like knight coming to G5, G6, and knight to E6, just to like play very solid. Something like this, But then he surprises me with this move queen A4. With his king in the center, he just suddenly like develops his queen on the other side. And at this moment, I think queen G6 was particularly strong. Because if... I didn't play queen G6, but queen G6 was particularly strong. Because if castle, there's like knight D2 stuff.
Let's see.
Like that.
Queen G6. If you castle, F4 actually seems to be just...
Oh, and bishop to H3, yeah? So queen G6, I didn't even see that this move was, but it was super strong. Of course, it feels like white is doing some weird stuff. So I didn't play queen G6 because I didn't consider it. I played queen H4 with the idea that G3 is definitely not what white wants. And in case of short castle, I think here I planned knight d2. And if rook moves, then knight to e4. I actually think this is my plan.
Just try to make a
Yeah, I think
draw,
so.
yeah?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to repeat like this.
But, that makes sense.
Yeah, again, it was like he was on a suicide mission.
He played g3.
Without castling, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so now my queen invades.
Queen g4?
Queen g4. Even though queen h3 apparently.
So
So
f1?
yeah, so queen f3 is... But also, like, imagine if you castle here,
Yeah.
then, like, this is just busted. Like, completely done.
This is
Knight
over.
f3 comes, f4, queen h3.
You're also winning a piece with e4 next move.
Yeah, e4 is also a threat winning a piece. So, so after queen g4, I think g3 was also a huge mistake. Queen g4, it's already like very serious for white.
Yeah.
So rook
Rook
f1,
f1.
knight g5,
Mm-hmm.
which also nicely stops d takes e5, right? So that's quite
Yeah.
cute.
Best move here would be f4
Yeah,
for...
he just gave a pawn up because of king d2, he allows knight to f3.
Yes.
King moves to c3, so he's just trying to escape the battlefield. But now, did I play e4 first and then took on h2, yeah?
No, you took on h2.
First I took on h2.
Yeah.
Okay, probably e4 first is also very good.
Rook to h1.
And then I brought the knight back to f3.
Queen to a5.
Queen to a5, and now I think this was a nice moment because he has some ideas of queen c7, so I needed to stop that. So I think I played this like queen g5,
That's right.
and then the queen comes back to e7, and his queen becomes pointless there. But more so, b6 is actually very often just opening because the king is now here, so I'm opening the queen side now, which is kind of funny. Usually the king is there, you open the you try to play on that side. Right now here the king is there, and you're playing on the queen side.
You're not letting him get away.
But most importantly, he's just down a pawn, so it doesn't actually matter, right? That I'm also positionally, like Magnus looked at this position, he was like, "What?
What is he doing? How is he playing like this?
Yeah, take." So I don't have to take back because there's f4, so I can just bring the queen back. Knight d4. Now I can bring the knight back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, b3. I think this was the final mistake. I think it's a very bad position.
Yeah.
But at least you don't have to lose on the spot. This one loses on the spot because, okay, b6 comes.
Mm-hmm.
This is very thematic. cb6, c5.
Mm-hmm.
So I attack the knight. The king is on c3, but also the knight is attacking this. So tactics are in the air. So Maxime was thinking he'll play b3, bishop b1, king b2, but of course I'm striking much faster.
Yeah. Funny move right now after knight to b5.
I think that like everything wins here. I think I played d4.
No, he played bishop b7.
Okay, preparing d4.
Yes.
But I don't think it's a funny move because d4 is just like...
Right.
Yeah.
It's just funny because, everything is exploding around you and you're just simply developing your last piece.
Yeah, but this is like a safe move. You prepare ab6, you prepare d4, bishop. In case of knight d3, bishop can come into the game too. It's very...
It's a great move.
Yeah, so he
Because he got his pawn on a7.
Yeah.
That's a plus.
No, but the problem is d4 is coming now.
Yeah.
Probably everything wins here. Did I take on d3 at this moment?
Yes.
Yeah, I just decided to take the rook.
Yes.
Because king d3, and then bishop h1. So he can't take back because queen e4. So of course everything was winning, but at least here I'm just a clean rook ahead.
He has some pawns on that
Okay.
side.
He has 4 passed pawns.
He was hoping.
In like an end game, you can imagine, okay, maybe the pawns get rolling, but it's still a middle game, so he's still getting checkmated. That's the problem.
Queen e4.
Queen e4, so if king c3, queen e1, that's the problem.
That's nice.
Yeah. King d2, of course, I simply can play rook to e8, and whatever.
So he went up.
He went up, nowhere to go, but up. Queen e2, I think, again, many moves are winning. So yeah, I think he played king b4 here. Queen d2, okay, so the point is now, if king a4, I'm grabbing another pawn, right?
Pick the pawns up.
So he probably played rook c3 here, right?
Rook c3. Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to avoid losing some of his, because he only has pawns left, so he has to avoid losing them. Did I play bishop c6 here?
Bishop 6.
Yeah, so attacking the knight. After that falls, this falls. And then the knight is the only thing holding this one together.
Yeah. And a4.
Yeah,
Was
so
still kicking.
take. The king. Okay, now I can take this guy.
Yep.
Actually, can I also take on a7? Like, why didn't I take on a7 here? I don't know. I mean,
Why not, I guess.
okay, I guess it's
Queen
because
takes d4
yeah,
wins.
it's because everything wins.
Is I guess you just wanted to finish it with the checkmate. Rook to d8.
Yeah, no, it's clear. I'm both upper full rook for 2 pawns, but also his king is on b5. But he does have a passed a pawn. Okay, so like this endgame, I'm not sure anymore. This one, I'm not sure.
Yes.
This one, I'm not sure.
It
So-
becomes a race, yeah, at that point.
Yeah, that one becomes probably winning for black,
Actually-
but a little bit probably winning. Probably.
Maybe.
But yeah, it becomes tricky for sure.
Yeah, the problem is...
Yeah. Yeah, so here, and now there's rook d6.
Yes. Rook to d6. He did not.
I think he sacrifices queen now with a5. No, because if he tries to save the queen, like here, for example, I mean, I just can pick up this pawn, and then you can resign. Probably among other things.
Yes.
Okay. So he decides to sack the queen. Actually, I didn't expect this move. I thought he would just resign. And then I started to get worried. Like, okay, he's down a queen. He's not threatening b7. But I'm a little bit scared. You know, I don't know why, but I'm a little bit scared.
So you.
Of course, it's pure desperation.
You didn't take the queen first.
Yeah.
You went
so
here.
Here I provoke him forward. Then I go here. So again, if rook c6, then I should probably just take on a7. Or first rook c6, then take on a7.
Yeah.
So he went back.
He didn't.
He didn't go back. Why didn't he go back?
It's over.
Oh, he just resigned.
Queen d5, he resigned.
So why did he resign at this moment and not before?
Probably because you take, and then you just
Oh,
simply
yeah,
take.
now I just take the other. Yeah,
Queen
there's-
a4.
Yeah, well, king b7, and then we go back, and he goes back. But again, he's not really threatening this because then always I'll just start
You always have to check.
just start pushing pawns. Yeah.
And if he goes rook c6, I mean, even rook c8, I think wins, right?
He's not threatening anything also.
Yeah.
Like this is let's imagine it's white's move. This is kind of the nice theme, yeah? This is a very common one, yeah?
Yeah.
So yeah, you have two connected pass pawns. It looks very dangerous, but yeah, you imagine this, right? Like this is a win because here. But for example, this is a draw.
That's a
right?
draw.
This is a draw, but this is a win. This is
Yeah.
kind of funny queen and pawn endings.
Very
yeah,
nice.
That was the last game.
The last game, and if I remember correctly, you were winning the 8th one as well against
Yeah.
Magnus.
Yeah, and the 9th one.
And the 9th one, but you
The 8th one
finished-
I didn't mind because it was an interesting game and I was really putting pressure on him. And then the last, like there was one moment, it was a difficult decision: rook fd1 or rook cd1, and I didn't choose the right rook, but it wasn't an easy one. And then the 9th one I really didn't like because it was just a very simple tactic: just sack the exchange and he resigns.
Yeah.
But yeah, both those games I was objectively winning at one moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned that at that point, even though you were over 2,800, you still haven't won a big event with Magnus in it. Did you feel like you must have felt that you already arrived, you're already part of the elite, but this must have cemented that feeling as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had this period in 2012 when I became around 2780 or so.
Because you were like 22 years of age at that point.
Yeah. Like in 2012 was the first time I got to top 5. And I had some tournaments. Like I had a very good run of tournaments. I won Dortmund, Tal Memorial. I was leading before the last round. I lost to Levon, as I mentioned, like from the opening, just dead lost. And Magnus won the tournament. He was a half point behind me. He beat Luke McShane in the last round. I think Luke McShane, yeah. And he won the tournament like that. And then Bilbao, I was dominating the tournament in 2012. I had beaten him in the first round. I had beaten, I was beating everyone. I beat Sergei Karyakin in a nice game. And then somehow, it was actually a 3-1-0 scoring system. Somehow he caught up. Magnus did, with a huge point deficit. And then we played a blitz playoff and he won that. So there was some like close calls. And this was the first, I think the first time I won clear first with Magnus in a tournament. I hope I'm not forgetting something, but I don't think so.
Yeah, definitely a lot of... I'm not finding the word right now. I want to say vibrations, but that's not the word. It almost felt like a seismic wave right after this performance, 7-0. So definitely a historical moment at that point. After that, you made a move to the United States.
Yeah, I think it's
became
like
a resident of the St. Louis, basically.
After this result, I had a very good European Club Cup.
Yeah.
And then
Playing for Italy.
Yeah, the European Club Cup, but playing for an Italian team. Actually, with Hikaru, we were on the same team. The team was called Obiettivo Riscaldamento, and we were on the same team. It was, and I had a very good result there. And then I was +3 in the Grand Prix in 2014 in Baku, which I won tied with Gelfand, and I hit 28.50, something like that. And after that, I immediately just expelled all my rating. I lost a bunch of games at the end of that tournament. Then I scored +1 in an event in Tashkent. I lost 12 points. +1 in a super event, Grand Prix. Then I did -1 in 2014 London Classic. And very soon I was like 28-20 again. It was like all, this rating is very easy to lose. So I immediately lost all of it. But yeah, this was a good run.
Yeah, excellent run. Sinquefield Cup is starting in fact, just a week from now. Rabbit and Blitz starting tomorrow. Still last couple of tournaments from the Grand Chess Tour, 2023 Grand Chess Tour. You're leading right now, so definitely in a good position. Thanks for taking the time and going through these games. I know our audience really wanted to see this, so this is definitely a gift for them and for the chess world as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
See you guys next time.
To see such young players, we might be seeing a matchup of 1 and 2 for years to come. We might see these two players, now that Caruana has emerged as such a phenomenal talent, seeing him challenge Carlsen, or they challenge each other to grow, to compete,